when you are trying to do something that not too many people have done, then you get challenged often. You should be ready to be challenged all the time, questioned all the time.
Bipin credits you for getting the IPO done. I don't know whether you know that. The company valuation was about 70% lower. Did that pinch somewhere?
Truly, it hurts. It was a very, very tough time. Like, regardless of the facade I had as a leader in the company, almost every day or every alternate day, if I was going for a cycling thing or a walk or a run, I actually have a playlist on my Spotify called Motivational Playlist.
Okay.
So maybe that will be one of my regrets. Like, even today, I'm responsible for all the financial decisions of the company. And sometimes when I want to be critical of myself, this could be one of those moments where I would think, "Ki tab kyun nahi kar liya?" We could have done it at that time.
Yeah. You listed, it must have been this incredible moment of perhaps relief, also joy.
I will show them how it's done. That I don't want any substandard people in the company. You have to give them clear feedback. When the going gets tough, if you've delivered on your requirements yourself, then don't allow anyone else to question you for any whimsical reason.
Upasana, thank you so much for joining us. And of course, I've seen your journey. And you're quite the rarest of the rare, I would say. Not only have you co-founded and built a profitable fintech business, but you have also been the first female founder to actually take a digital payments and a financial services business public in India. Actually, I don't know whether you acknowledge that or realize that, but you truly are the rarest of the rare.
So thanks, Saloni, for having me here, and it's truly a pleasure meeting with you and talking to you. But first I want to talk about what you just said. I think that we are so used to seeing so few women excel and lead in some of these fields, whether it is in running warships or whether it is in taking companies public. That's where that rarest of rare comes from. Now, I'm not trying to be I'm trying to be a little modest, but I'm also trying to say that it is easy to be rare when there are very few who are attempting it. So I definitely hope that your podcast will get many more women to jump into, the opportunity, that life presents us.
Yeah.
So I think that would be my opening thought process for you. And I am aware that, not many women, even today, there are more founders in the startup ecosystem in India that are women, even in fintech. But I think that it's still slim pickings. And, it should be that at least 25-30% representation. So, wo bhi hua nahi hai. I'm waiting, to grow old and prior to that, seeing those days pan out.
Yeah.
And I think that there are so many women who are trying to do their thing.
Yeah.
But many of them have the talent and potential, but sometimes they're not giving it everything they've got. And I think that's something I would really want to see change or unbundle, so to speak.
That's, that's really interesting. This was going to be a conversation I'm going to have a little bit down the podcast, but given that we're talking about it, a large part of the reason of doing this podcast is, there's this great saying which says that if you can't see it, you can't be it, right? So women like yourselves really paved the way for this next generation to have role models. Now, I want to touch a little bit about, you talking about the fact that women need to put in more, right? Do you believe that because that is a structural obstacle in them actually being able to be more? You several times in your journey have said that investors have asked you questions about marriage, about pregnancy, about, do you really belong in a room? You've been mistaken for Bipin's assistant, for example. Don't you believe that is demoralizing? That somewhere, there are a lot of women who have, and these were just things said. There are things also done which do prevent women from rising to the top. How do you feel about that?
No, definitely they are demoralizing. But I think it is instances like that that can pull people back. And I chose to experience them, to set them aside and say that, you know, I will show them how it's done. So I think that when you are trying to do something that not too many people have done, then, you get challenged often. You should be ready to be challenged all the time, questioned all the time. Do I mean to say that women need to be questioned more? No, I don't intend to say that. But I'm saying that even if that's happening, so what? If you have a vision, you have the confidence, then all these obstacles should not stop you. Because in any case, achieving your penultimate goal is going to be hard enough.
Yeah.
These are not the most difficult challenges or obstacles you will face. One should not be facing them. I would like to believe that the instances are coming down. I do see many more women are getting funded. I know many more women, including like yourself, are trying to, become investors. So I think building your own table is kind of happening. But yeah, I mean, at that time, I'm sure at that time I must have cried that night, or I must have gone to the washroom and like shouted at some wall or something. But yeah, you think of it as a momentary thing and don't make it so important. I personally am a person who does not believe so much in external validation. A lot of my confidence is internal, and I don't expect that too many people will say or think the same thing about what I want to say, and it doesn't bother me as much.
Is that something that has grown over time? Because I before I launched my fund, in my 30s, I interviewed at a very large VC fund, and the person interviewing me, he sat across the table and asked me, "So are you married?" And I said no. So he looks at me and he says, "Commitment issues." And this was happening in the context of a formal interview, right? That was the first instance with this fund. The second time I got called back. So the first time I went back and I said, okay, maybe this, I may not want to be in this workplace. The second time I went back, the gentleman who interviewed me, he told me that, either our founders will be intimidated by you, or our founders will probably not take you seriously. And that was the context in which he started the conversation, right? Of course, now it was many years ago, had a career in venture, since then have launched Nomikai, now second fund in. That still conversation still stays with me, right? And I, like you, tell people you need to have a thick skin. Just, you're going to hear these, and these are things that you hear on a daily basis as a woman in any case, right? So you move on. From your perspective, was there a particular incident after which you said, okay, this is not going to bother me anymore? Was there something which clicked in your brain?
Yeah, I would also say that the confidence became stronger in myself and my capabilities over a period of time. And I've been doing this startup journey for 16 years now. I still remember there was an instance, we were in our early years, I would say Series A or Series B level, and we were building sort of the top deck, hiring some key people in the management structure. And, one of them was not working out. And I still remember that, and I had interviewed him, and he knew that I had hired him. Of course, my co-founder and other people had also interviewed him. So when 2-3 months in, when I pulled up the gentleman and said that, things are not looking good, you need to apply yourself more, and, business is growing, but in the same manner as it was without you. So then, what have you added? Like if you are growing at, let's just take 30%, and we are still growing at 30%, तो फिर आपने क्या किया है? So, there was back and forth. And I remember a couple of days later, he came back and told me, I've assessed how I've tried to build my team, the processes or the sales process I've tried to change. But I think one of the most important reasons why I'm not effective is because you are my manager.
Oh my God.
So, I mean, for a second, I looked at myself, I thought about it, and I was like,
absurd.
Yeah, it's absurd. And now, if today somebody tells me, I will tell them, that's the door. Email me your resignation. Right? Because you can't hold other people accountable for your own work or your own initiative. So, but anyway, at that time, I thought, yaar, ye kya bol raha hai? So,
Did you say कि okay मेरे में कुछ गलती है?
I
There
didn't say
wasn't-
that
हाँ.
to myself, but
Hmm.
I had a conversation about it with my co-founder. Then we spoke about it with one of our board members, also one of our investors. Obviously, my co-founder knows me very well. And of course, that investor knows me well because he has invested behind me, right? Both of them being men. They also didn't say, we should have been bold at the time and said, ki, tell him bye-bye.
Yeah.
But no, what they said is that, okay, let's do this. Call his bluff. Let him report to Bipin for a month or two. And then we'll see if his performance changes or not. Now, we did that. And performance didn't change.
Of
So,
course.
we had to say bye to him. Today, if somebody pulls that shit with me, I will not accept it. I will not even go to my
Of course.
co-founder or anybody else to ask. I will take the decision myself.
Yes.
At that time, I didn't have the chops to take it. Why I didn't have, I don't know. But I'm just saying that, you also realize over a period of time that
Yeah.
when the going gets tough, if you delivered on your requirements yourself, then, don't allow anyone else to question you for any
Yeah.
whimsical reason. So, I mean, that would be one instance that still remains sore with me. That
Yeah.
why did I take shit from this guy?
Yeah,
I didn't need
yeah.
to.
Yeah. No, I think, I've had moments of crippling self-doubt where, there is almost shame associated when somebody calls you out on something which you know fundamentally is not right, but you're afraid to be assertive. It's a woman, right? Or you're a woman leader, you're being assertive, you're asserting yourself. Anyway, he's told you that he has a problem with you. And now if you go tough on him, oh, what will that be? Like, will that perpetuate? And actually, this is so common across the board that I've heard a lot of women
It's double
leaders.
standards, right?
Complete.
Like today, where I am in terms of the stage of the company, I'm just coming from a meeting right before this where we were discussing our business plan for the new financial year, which starts next week. So, in those situations, can I be a softie? No, I have to be brutal.
Of
I have to
course.
be brutal with people if they bring numbers which don't work for the company. Ki, yaar, ye kya soch ke aaye ho? Like, this doesn't work. Go back to the drawing board. And now, whether I'm a woman or a man, if you're going to war or if you're trying to build a business, you are expected to be shrewd and brutal. I would say it's double standards when, women are being tough, then they are being called on, bad
Difficult.
words or
Yeah, exactly. The
difficult
P
or
word.
assertive or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what the job demands.
Yeah. Has it become better since you've become a publicly listed company? Do you feel like now that external validation, while it is not important for you, has enabled you to have harder conversations simply because of what the title entails?
I think you could say because of the listing, but also I would say general progression. Like after you go through so many ups and downs, and the world only knows more about the ups.
Yes.
The downs are more internal to
Yeah,
a few
private.
people
Yeah.
or within the company. And then once you've lived through those downs and come back strong out of it, then your confidence level, your conviction only goes up. And so, yeah, I would say that perhaps, in our build-up journey, we might have died a few times. We could have possibly died, but if we survived and we came out stronger, even like if you take COVID, many companies did not thrive and come out of it. So then you give some credit, you pat yourself on the back. If nobody's patting on your back, at least you pat yourself on the back that look, we came out strong on it. And I think that helps you. Definitely looking outside in, I think that credibility does go up.
Yeah.
Especially in the fintech sector, if you are a well-governed, well-regulated company, you're getting more licenses from the regulators and you are listed on the stock market, then it definitely gives you a leg up.
So the intention of, let's say, taking a company public, there was no design for it, but over time that kind of blossomed, right? That you came back, you met Bipin you kind of pushed.
That time I was like 28 years old and I decided that year that this year I'm going to do my own thing. Then I had this question whether I should do it in the US or I should do it somewhere else. Once I figured out I wanted to do a fintech or a payments related thing, then I was very clear it has to be India because it has to be an emerging market. And अब emerging market करना है तो फिर Latin America, China क्यों जाना है? India ही जाते हैं.
Yeah.
See, I'll tell you that when I tell someone that, we've been doing MobiKwik for 16 years, what people don't realize is that, for example, Zomato started in 2007.
Yeah.
Flipkart also started around that
Mm.
time. So even before us. And at that time, the number of customers who had access to internet or, consumer internet customer base was so small. So you're a little bit ahead of time because the smartphone revolution and then the mobile internet revolution actually started coming in from 2011, 12,
Sure.
13.
Yeah.
So the early years were slow in some manner.
Mm.
And what I meant is that, of course, I had very good background of product and tech and building new products and especially payment products. That I was good on. Of course, I didn't know anything about how things are happening in India. I knew that payment success rates were poor, but the connections, speaking to the banks, all of that regulatory environment, I got to know once I moved back. But had I worked, after HSBC and PayPal, or instead of somewhere in between with a younger startup, and I had the opportunity, I had offers multiple times. Let's say at a early stage startup, then I would have gotten exposure to some elements of marketing, some elements. See, when you are in the first 10, first 20 employees or 30 employees of a company, because you don't have a specialist for everything,
Correct.
you do what you are good at,
Yeah.
but you also get to do many other things, just from a running the shop perspective.
Yeah.
And those are the things that could have helped me from a general management perspective.
So that 0 to 1 experience is essentially where you felt you kind of had to unlearn things and pick things up.
So no, actually I was going to say that since Bipin and I are both not MBA grads and both of us are engineering grads, so when we started the company, I think the first 3-4 years, which is the seed to series A, we actually bootstrapped the company for more than 4 years. And by the time we bootstrapped, we had the license, the wallet license from RBI, we had a few million customers, we were profitable, we had some 30-40 employees. So that learning is on the job. So instead of doing an MBA or working for another startup in early stage, we actually did it in our own startup.
Yeah.
That's why I would say that first 3.5 years were a super arduous learning curve.
Yeah.
Because you're learning everything that you hadn't done before from scratch.
Yeah. Yeah. And, by the time you came closer to the journey of, let's say, okay, we're now going to list. We built this business up. We now believe we are strong enough. We've now been in the market for this long. We have a certain market share. We're now deciding that we want to list the business. What was that conversation internally between you and Bipin that was like, okay, we're not going to go for a strategic exit. We've raised capital. We've got some of the best investors on our cap table. We're now going to push it and take this to IPO. What was that conversation?
See, I've never been fond of strategic because if you look at the Indian history, there have actually been very few good strategic transactions. It's actually one of the problems from a VC ecosystem perspective that the only listings seem to be a valid outcome, or you become a sustainable company. And I would say that even today that is the case. Apart from early stage acquisitions, there are very few, you can actually count them.
Yeah.
Total acquisitions across all sectors, not just my sector, would be less than 100, where there were meaningful acquisitions and everybody was happy with the outcome, etc. What we made up our mind after our sort of 21 half-hearted or, half-baked attempt at IPO, we said that, look, the market is turning, this whole funding crunch is happening. In a couple of years, it will come back. So at that time, we made a decision that this will be our solution and we will use these couple of years to turn profitable. I still remember at that time, our revenue was around 300 crores and our EBITDA was negative 100 crores. And from there, in FY24, because in 25 is when we started the IPO process, we had reached 900 crores of revenue and we had an EBITDA positive 37 crore. So that is the goal we set for ourselves, that we will grow and we will turn profitable so that when the market turns, we'll be ready. And, that's exactly, what we did, in 24.
So I want to talk a little bit about the 21 period, right? Markets were hot, these companies were listing, go to the market, the companies was valued at about $1 billion then. You mentioned in an interview that you did with CNBC that everything that had to go wrong went wrong at that period of time, and of course, that you guys decided to not go ahead. I was an investment banker and I'd help companies with listings. It's such a grueling process. It's so tedious. That journey must have been so painful for you guys as founders. What was that period between 21 to 24 like for you? You guys decided we'll become more capital efficient. We don't need that much capital. We're going to be profitable. What did you as a leader have to do, and what was going through your mind during that period?
I had to run a very, very tight ship.
Yeah.
And, eyes on the price every month, every quarter. We have to grow and we have to turn profitable. We have to grow and we have to turn profitable. So,
And that balance is so hard,
yeah.
right?
So that is what was going on in the mind, and we had to take many decisions to make that happen. But I can tell you, it was a very testing time personally. Not that
What are some of the decisions that you guys took during that time?
we became far more clear about the strategy. Maybe we were working on a few businesses where we are not getting the payback. Then we said, okay, we'll put this on pause. We'll not be spending more here. This requires too much investment or burn. So you can't be doing this. You have to focus on businesses that will give us, profit. And, that has always been the case. Every year you try to build 2-3 new products or features that will give you a strong growth, strong lift, while scaling the other organic business also. And so, and then when you find that, you double down, whichever one is your successful one or two products. So kept doing that, kept bringing the cost and performance under check. And, we've never done any mass hiring or firing. We've always had a very clear perspective on that. So you do it methodically. Every year, we want to make sure that you're not only bringing in very high performing people into the company, but the appraisal cycle is also brutal, which means that I don't want any substandard people in the company. You have to give them clear feedback. And either they have a time limit to improve or they can find themselves. A very clear focus on which businesses we want to grow. Financial planning was very strong, where we want to get the margins. We cannot afford to do, marketing spends going haywire, very strong control on that. So I would say finance became very important and taking those capital allocation decisions and efficiency decisions. But I can tell you that it was a very, very tough time. Like regardless of the facade I had as a leader in the company, almost every day or every alternate day, if I was going for a, cycling thing or a walk or a run, I actually have a playlist on my Spotify. Since your show is sponsored by Spotify, I should say that. I'm an ardent Spotify user. I have a playlist called Motivational Playlist.
Okay.
Every time when I'm in the dumps, and it has a list of songs that I like.
Which songs are there?
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Unstoppable. Sia. And various mix of Hindi, Punjabi. There's one song called Aam Jehe Munde, which is the song is all about like a regular person only can become someone and make a difference. And then of course there is Laksh. Laksh to pana hi hai. Like that. So you have to keep yourself going, and only then you can charge up your entire company to go
rally behind you. In that point of time, was there any, as a founder, you're obviously in this tough spot. You want to grow, but also at the same time conserve capital. But everywhere around you, companies are getting funded. There was a period when your competitors are very well funded. Is there envy? Is there resentment that, look at them, my product is better than theirs, but yet I am in this position? Was there ever that thought?
No, I'm saying that those kind of thoughts would have been much before. Even now, there would be times when you think that the playing field is not level. It's not fair. But that's life. Life is not perfect. So business will also not be perfect, right? Like, see, we started building a wallet framework right from our start. And one of our direct competitors, they also built that. And then, companies are getting built around that. The regulations became tighter. The KYC has to be bank grade KYC. Everything costs. And you do all of those investments. Then one fine day, you have a common protocol called UPI that comes up, which is great for India and it's, the poster child of fintech. But it is also not so great for people who were building their own rails before UPI because And even today, if you see, it's not a hidden fact that 85% of the market is controlled by two large American companies.
Yeah.
They could invest billions of dollars in marketing. They don't need to make a business out of payments in India. Just the financial data of a billion Indians is more than enough.
Is that frustrating as an Indian company?
It is.
Yeah.
It is frustrating.
Yeah. I want to continue down this IPO journey before we switch segments for a bit. You listed, it must have been this incredible moment of perhaps relief, also joy. There were two questions. One is that the company valuation was about 70% lower. Did that pinch somewhere that we were one day in 21 we were worth X, now we're X minus whatever? Did that hurt?
Absolutely, it hurts. But also, you spoke about you were a banker yourself. So even in 21, we could have done it at a much better valuation than this valuation.
Yes.
But of course, we were not getting the $1 billion, but we could have done it at 800 or 750, which would have still been better than what we eventually did it at in the second
24.
attempt in 25. But in 24, I'm sorry. But yeah, so of course it pinched कि तभी कर लिया होता फिर तो इतना मेहनत फिर से क्यों किया? But ठीक है, I think you can't go back in time.
Yeah.
Right? Like in movies you can, but in real life you can't. So maybe that will be one of my regrets. Like even today, I'm responsible for all the financial decisions of the company. And sometimes when I want to be critical of myself, this will be one of those moments when I would think कि तब क्यों नहीं कर लिया? We could have done it at that time.
Yeah.
It was a different market. Enthusiasm levels were high, but even at that market, if we were getting a particular valuation, we would have perhaps gone down the similar journey of one of our competitors who would have been, in the dumps for a few years.
Yeah.
But then we would have to do the same performance that we did after to get to where we were. So this time when we were doing it, of course, we were unlucky a little bit in the sense that the market was very good in 24. We had filed in January, but many things happened. One of our peers lost a license.
Yes.
So our application process got delayed.
Yes.
We only got the approval 8-9 months later, versus generally people get it in 3-4 months. By the time we got it, a whole new thing happened, which is that there was a lot of tightening in consumer credit from the regulator. Various circulars were coming. Few NBFCs got barred from dispersal.
Yeah.
So the sentiment was negative.
Yeah, and there was a lot of flux in the market at that point of time.
And actually from October 24 to kind of September 25 is when, the entire country went to some sort of consumer credit cycle in unsecured lending. And it only normalized in August, September of 25. And we were bang in the middle of roadshows when this is happening. So, what happened is that many of the investors were discounting the credit business. They were saying that a big chunk of your revenue is coming from credit distribution, but credit business in India, especially personal loan jo aap kar rahe ho, is in doldrums. So, I don't know what you're going to do out of this in 2 quarters or 3 quarters. So, I'm not going to value this. I'm only going to value your payments business. And this is the valuation of your payments business. Because while you're profitable now, and mind you, we had filed our papers with 5 quarters of profitability behind us.
But yet, that wasn't.
And,
wasn't enough.
yeah, because when we were doing the roadshows, it was apparent to us as well as the investors that the upcoming 2-3 quarters will not be profitable.
Yeah.
And, once that uncertainty, sentiment change happens, it's very hard to do anything because it's very much a herd mentality. So anyways, we thought that it's better to go ahead with it right now and then deliver strong numbers and then you will be rewarded for it.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Today we are at an even lower valuation. But, I've also become...
Have you stopped checking the stock price?
I have stopped checking it regularly. But of course, I check it on periodic intervals. You have to know where you are, what is happening. At least on a weekly basis, I have to know. But then you also become a little more grounded that, now I know I have a whole screen which shows me, all the Nifty, including Nifty Bank, Nifty FS, etc., Nifty Small Cap. So I know that if the market is down X%, you will go down X% or Y%. It's not, you're not going to be an exception. I know that if there's an incident in one of the big banks,
That gets
all the stocks
impacted.
are going to fall that day
Mhm.
in this sector. So I've become
now-
resilient now.
So now that mental shift is happening of running a public company.
Yeah.
Bipin credits you for getting the IPO done. I don't know whether you know that. He talked about it in an interview. And he said that this IPO happened because of one person, and that's Upasna. Because your persistence helped in nailing very key investor who essentially ended up leading the IPO. What do you think that you did that Bipin couldn't do?
Okay, yes and no. I will say it was this incident about the investor and building the book is only one of the incidents because the process was so arduous for us.
Of course.
As you know, we tried it in 21
Hmm.
and there was a different team that is working on it in 24. So if you file in Jan 24, you actually started the work on it. We actually started it in, I remember, Dashera or Dhanteras of the previous year. So October, November of the 23 is when you start the work, building the DRHP, etc. We filed it on 4th January, sleepless nights, the entire team that is working on it. And then, all of a sudden, everything Q&A is going on with SEBI, and all of a sudden, something happens with a competitor, namely, Paytm. And like, अभी तो किसी को नहीं मिलने वाला, ये तो बहुत बड़ा event हो गया. So, like, यार, but हमने तो कुछ किया ही नहीं, हमारे तो सारे licenses सही चल रहे हैं. So then you have to persist, So
and this is actually what founders don't know. They see the listing. They don't see the process of it. Like what you're describing is actually exactly what it is like. Your process was far more painful, I would say, actually. But a lot of founders underestimate this.
Yeah, it was painful because for no rhyme or reason, we got delayed by 2-3 months because of this. Then we got it back on track where, the due diligence is happening with the regulator.
It's so important that you kind of have a CFO who's ready to take a company public and deal with all the complexity that happens with it. And it was essentially on your shoulders.
My shoulders, along with my team of my legal guy, my CS and my finance people. And, we are answering these questions. Now what is happening right at that time, this is all as per public news, their own leadership at SEBI is under question because of something happening with Hindenburg and all of that. So nobody's willing to take a decision. The leadership is all, on a statue or stop mode. So
and this has got nothing to do with the company.
it has nothing to do with us or any of the other companies that are stuck because nobody wants to take complex decisions. Like the buck always stops with the leader, and the leader is under question, and strikes are happening outside the regulator's office from their own employees. Then it's like a what do you say? It's like a strike. So that further derailed us. And ultimately, we had to push the corridors, at the regulator.
And was that again you? Was that on your shoulders, largely?
It was me, and I had a core team of few people. I mean, I remember I got a meeting in the finance minister's office with various secretaries first, and then eventually with the finance minister. To explain that, it's been 9 months and this is not fair. And, please tell me what we have not replied and where, there is any fault in our application. Why should we not be going public? And at the same time, I had my head of legal, outside SEBI asking for yet another emergency meeting because they don't even give you meetings and you have to plead for it and all of that. So, बहुत कुछ किया just to get an approval, which most companies don't have to do so much.
Yeah.
I mean, we also had investment banks, remember? They are also doing and we're pushing them also. So, you do all of that and then you have to expend a lot of personal effort to get it done. And by the time we got this approval, the market had changed. The market was not
as buoyant
as it was during right up to the summer. It was just going down and little by little, FIIs were selling. So the market was turning. And so then the book building became a problem. And one of the investment banks had put together some of the book, but it was not commensurate in terms of what we wanted. And then, it cycles after cycles. And because we had gone through this process in 21, I really developed that never say never attitude. Never say never. So we're at it and we had no meetings. So I remember the investor relations guy, myself and Bipin, we were all parked in some hotel in Bombay every week. And if the investment banks are not getting us meetings, we are getting the meetings ourselves. And I remember, this investor that you're talking about, we, had a very casual, I had a very casual message with him and I said that, look, you're not getting a meeting only. I know you don't want to invest. Just meet us or just meet me. And, you can just treat it as an hour of guidance you've given me. I won't ask you for anything. And lot of cajoling and all of that. Got the meeting. And that meeting, instead of being a 45-minute meeting, ended up being a 3-hour meeting. And I think it's like a PhD thesis only that you're defending. So we got enough merit into the right guy, the decision maker. Of course, his team below him was completely negative. They did not want to look at the team.
Yeah.
But we got enough positive points through in that meeting that the gentleman said, okay, give us time. We'll work on it and then we'll call you again.
Yeah.
And in the interim, we tried to get some more big shot investors in place. We went to Singapore. And I know the day we reached Singapore, he gave us time for the next day back to Mumbai.
My.
So we did all those kinds of things, like doing a meeting and then flying back right to Mumbai to give the next 3-hour meeting. And we really converted, I want to say, at least the top 3-4 investors personally, and the top 2 mutual funds of the country. We got them to invest behind the founders. Based on personal initiative and perseverance, with none of the banks really getting that done. And I'm not using this to diss the bank, but I'm saying that
it has to be the founder, kind of pushing, and that requires such a tremendous amount of tenacity actually to push through. Which, now I'd love to talk about the fact that, we've talked about a lot about what the market did to MobiKwik, what the journey was like building it. I want to now understand what MobiKwik did for, your personal relationships, the marriage, friendships. Somewhere you remarked that you wouldn't necessarily recommend getting married to your co-founder. That, when you have a stressful day and you want to decompress from the CEO, you come back home to the CEO.
Yeah.
Where does that stress go now? Like, as the two of you, have you found a better system?
I think see, there will always be bad days. But I think the reason I say that, firstly, I want to say that, this has been a great journey for me and I couldn't have done it without Bipin, and he wouldn't have been able to do it without me either. And we are very happy, both personally and professionally. But the reason I say I would not recommend it is because I have realized over the years, and so has he, that it puts additional stress on your personal life.
Yes.
So if you don't want additional stress, I mean, we could be running 2 different startups, and those startups could also be equally stressful. But the timing of those stress may not always be same.
Correct.
In this case, the timing will always be same.
Yes.
So, and similarly, if you have a personal challenge, like, his father was not well, he's in the hospital in ICU for many months, and I'm holding the fort in the office, but I'm also his daughter-in-law. I'm also affected by his bad health. Or similarly, and we eventually lost in this journey, both of our fathers have passed away. But whenever that happens, whenever there are any good or bad things, they affect both the people, personally also.
Yeah.
But it is expected that one of them will man the show, on the office front, because you can't completely, give up on it. So that's why I say it's additional stress. We've learned how to, joke at it. I can definitely say that a little bit of change came after we had a kid, which was quite a few years into building. We started in 2009. So 6 years after we started the company. Because then, you have little personal time because of your work. Then whatever personal time you have, it is all about your family, your child, and you both want to dote on him or her. So I think that brought a lot of balance, because otherwise you would have meals at whatever time, come home at whatever time. But now that you have someone that you have to go to, then it brought some accountability in our own selves that we have to be there. So I think that has been great. So when you have a worrisome day in the office, we can both go home and, share a wine or a beer.
Do you have any rules now? Because, my parents work together. They built a business together, and they were also, first generation entrepreneurs.
You should be giving me tips then.
No, but you're exactly right? Because the good times were shared, but it also became very difficult to compartmentalize the bad times. Right? We could see it, right? Like, they would have a stressful day or stressful period, or there were financial difficulties on the business, and that would obviously have, that would show up in the house as well. But the good times are also, great. So did you guys have now set rules about ki we will not talk about work when we're at the dinner table
We try very hard not to.
and not
Ca-
work weekends or things like that?
So we try hard not to bring in work into all the personal time. Can I say we are 100% compliant? No, but we've definitely improved from being, let's say, 80% non-compliant to maybe 10-15% non-compliant. So to a high level, we have so many other things to take care of at home for our families, etc., that we tend to keep work away. But can I say that we never discuss work at home? No. Just this morning
not
over
possible.
breakfast, we were chatting about a key hiring decision.
And so kids are used to this now. Ki mom, dad are going to talk about work, and that's basically the norm.
Yeah, no, see, today was a work day, so kids are already in school when we are having breakfast. So, but yeah, you're right. In front of kids, in terms of in front of family, we try to minimize.
Yeah. Tell me about friendships, right? As a woman who's high performing, very ambitious, you have this business that you're running, then you're building. Have you had the ability to sustain friendships because there is already so much going on? Are there good friendships that kind of help you, I guess, decompress, or is that something you had to kind of sacrifice?
I think I have some good friends. I don't have as many friends as I used to have when I was a student or when I was single or let's say, even 15 years ago. But I don't have too many deep friends. I don't have the time.
Yeah.
I need time to invest. But to the extent that, yes, I can decompress, socialize, I do have some friends, but I don't have as many friends as I would like.
Yeah.
And there are many times I'm jealous when I hear of people going on, oh, we are going for a girls' night, or we're going for a girls' trip. And I'm often thinking, क्या मैं कर सकती हूँ? क्या मैं जा सकती हूँ? Just yesterday, I was discussing with my husband and my son that 1/3 time you are taking, 1/3 time you are taking, so much time work is taking. Then I have to take care of Nani and Nani's things also. मेरे पास अपने लिए कब time बचेगा?
Yeah.
So my son is like, just divide 1/4, 1/5.
No, I completely hear you. Somebody I respect, I met, he told me that as a founder, you have work, sleep, health, family, friends, pick any 3. Because you cannot have all 5, especially as a founder. So, for you, what does that priority list look like?
So you said work,
family, friends, sleep, and
health.
And health. Yeah.
So I think for me, it would be family, work, sleep, health, friends.
Yeah. Is it also difficult to find like-minded women who've kind of seen your journey because there's so few of them?
Absolutely. And I also think that I have no intention that I should only be friends with people who have had a similar journey. But yes, I think so many women I can't connect with. I mean, I had some good friends, and some of them are, they've taken their career a little slow. They're doing their own thing, either a job or a consulting. So, I mean, I'm my wish list is not that my friends have to be like me or super ambitious, etc. But I'm just saying, just baseline, having a career, having financial ambitions, and having their own opinion on something. I think I'm happy with just that much in friends. And there are few. I would say that given any 10 women, I would say that I would be able to speak with everyone nicely, but I would be able to really connect with maybe 25% of them, not more than.
Yeah. So, I'd love to talk to you a little bit about the show. We call this show Alpha Women. We've already, shot a few episodes. And for each woman, the word alpha has meant different things. Somebody said, okay, for me, alpha means courage. For me, somebody said, for me, alpha means purpose. Somebody said, for me, alpha means legacy and leaving a positive contribution. When you think of the word alpha woman, what goes through your mind?
Live life on your own terms.
And do you believe that's something that you have done? Is that something that you really look back on, and you will look back at life and say that, you completely live life on your own terms?
I would say that. Like, everyone has good, bad, and ugly. But so long as they're all mine, I chose them. So I'm happy. I'm happy with that. But yeah, I mean, in the work or professional parlance, I would say alpha for me will be someone who really knows what they want and is willing to give it their all.
Did you ever think of the word alpha was it a masculine word for you? Is that something that, what is that picture when you think of the word alpha? What do you picture in your mind?
Type A.
Yeah. But is it masculine? Is it a gendered word? No. Do you think you're an alpha?
I would think I am.
You have I read somewhere that, your personal motto is, kick up a storm or die trying. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, I don't give up easily. And I think every person's journey is really personal to them. And I don't know whether it's right or wrong. I have this feeling that I never get most of the important things right in the first attempt. Which is why I made this my motto. That I'm not going to give up until I get what I want.
Well, thank you so much, Upasana. I think a lot of life lessons, particularly through this. I think the biggest one is, just tenacity and persistence, that really comes through from your journey, right? The endeavor of building a company is already so hard. But the journey of actually taking it public and then sustaining it, I think is harder still. And that journey has not been told enough. And especially not from a lens of a founder who actually really had probably one of the hardest public, taking a company public journey, right? I think that is really founder fuel to really understand. Many people think that fundraising or just taking the company IPO is a milestone in itself. Little do they realize that there is a whole set of adventures that lie on the other side of ringing the bell as well. And, thank you so much for articulating that and also sharing a little bit about your life and about just philosophy of what it means to be Upasana. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I think the best is yet to come.
Well, fantastic. Awesome. Super. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for, again, yet another great episode. And once again, a huge shout out to our partners, Spotify, and media partners, Outlook Business.